Thank you for visiting ChristopherMedia.net.
What's up, everyone? Freddie the Pizza Man here, host of the Pizza Man podcast. Now joining forces with ChristopherMedia.net. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, the Pizza Man podcast. And, of course, find all the podcasts on ChristopherMedia.net. We talk Detroit sports. I bring on guests, passions, opinions, all for Detroit sports and more. We even talk pizza. So thanks for tuning in and spread the word.
Christopher Media, let's make some noise. Welcome to Beer Nuts, a weekly excursion into the world of craft beer, brought to you by MichiganBeerGuide.com. And now, here are the Beer Nuts.
Welcome to Beer Nuts, episode 109. Tonight we're going to go into gateway beers. Beers that you might offer to somebody that says they're not into craft beer, or maybe they're a little bit curious about craft beer, but a novice. So, with me today, we got a kind of a short staff today. We got Dugout.
Hey, everybody. How you doing?
And from Durham, North Carolina, we got Ross.
Hey, nice to be back again.
So, again, we're not pretentious. Perfect episode for those listeners that might be listening that are maybe Coors Light, Bud Light, not really into the craft, or but maybe looking to discover something new that's approachable. And that's what gateway beer is. It's an approachable beer that anybody can enjoy. One of those ones that'll say, oh, I don't drink craft beer, when we'll try this. And if you try it, and the ones we're going to taste tonight, we are betting that most of non-craft drinkers would appreciate and enjoy. So that being said, it's time for our quote of the week. So I have it up here somewhere. What happened to it? Hang on, I know what I did. Just a moment, please. And here we go. Let's see here. Okay, here's our quote of the week. The lottery gives you a 1 in 200 million chance. Oh, man. Let me cue that up again. Gosh, this disappeared off the screen just as I did this. So, Chris, take 2 on the quote of the week. Edit that out. And okay, for our quote of the week, the lottery gives you a 1 in 200 million chance you won't go to work tomorrow. Alcohol gives you 1 in 5. So maybe not tonight because we're having some approachable beers, but some of these bigger hitters, yeah, absolutely. So we're going to get right into things because I'm thirsty. So crack open a cold one, unless you're driving, and enjoy a beer with us, because tonight we're going to have beers that anybody can enjoy, even us. And maybe that's why we have a skeleton crew tonight. These may not be the most interesting beers to your seasoned craft drinkers like us, but you know what? I'm going to enjoy the ones I have, and the second one that I have tonight I've never tried. So, but the first one is a classic gateway beer that I think anybody would enjoy. It's a very easy beer to find. You can find it in some airports even. And it's Sam Adams Cherry Wheat. Reading the label here, crisp and slightly sweet. Brewed and bottled by the Boston Beer Company. It's a wheat ale brewed with real cherries and natural flavors added. So I'm going to pour it. And you would never know there were cherries in it. It's not red. It's just a golden color. Nice thin white head on it. Nice snow white head on it. You can smell a little bit of cherry on the nose, not a lot, but definitely getting some fruit on the nose. And now I'm going to taste it. And you can definitely taste the cherry, and it's not tart cherry, it's more sweet cherry. Not overly sweet, but just mildly sweet. Very, very approachable, easy. It's a wheat beer, so it's got a nice light backbone to it. It's actually pretty tasty. I've had this. I remember when my son was playing hockey, the bar in the hockey rink. Fortunately, we were lucky that we had a bar in the hockey rink. But when he was having his practices and games, I would go up to the little bar, and they always had this on tap. And you know, it's one of those real easy to drink. Again, it's the definition, I think, of a gateway beer. It's light, It's refreshing. It's not tart or sour that would chase somebody away. It's not bitter. That's another flavor that chases some people away that maybe aren't used to a beer like that. So it's just got all the characteristics of something that anyone could enjoy. Men, women, a Coors Light drinker would probably be like, wow, nice fruity, but it's a nice mild fruity taste. Not like some of these Berliner Weisses or Goses we have that have, a lot tart, fruity to it. So it's very subtle. I'm sure you guys have probably at some point or another encountered this. Any other comments from the other beer nuts?
No, I've sold a lot of Sam Adams in my day, so I've definitely had it and been around it. Not particularly a favorite of mine, but, to each his own. And we're looking at stuff that's going to, it's going to have a little more mainstream appeal to it if it's going to be considered a gateway beer. So it's it's not an offensive beer, but it's pretty much on the thin side, very, very light and light tasting.
Russ?
Yeah, I haven't actually had a lot of Sam Adams product in my life, and I don't think I've had that, so I don't have much to go on for it.
Wow, really surprised.
Yeah.
Honestly, when I picked it up, I was not very excited about it, but now that I'm drinking it, it's really pretty tasty. That being said, all the flavor profiles we usually cover on the show and the stuff we drink when we're drinking, we're drinking what we prefer. This is not going to be on my list when I go to the beer store, but I think, at least for me, or maybe another seasoned craft drinker, man, I mean, it's pretty solid. So if you are in an airport or somewhere where you might need to, make a selection, that's what I do.
I think Sam Adams has a good advantage on their stuff too, and that they're big enough that they advertise and everybody knows who they are. So somebody might be more reasonably susceptible to picking that for a first, beer in terms of craft beer, just because they've heard the name enough. Whereas, I guess there's other beers out there that you're just not going to see advertising on TV for, that people go, well, I've heard of this one and I haven't heard of that one, and maybe I'll stick with this one that other people seem to already know about. So they've got that going for them at any rate.
Well, and
to try to bridge people into the craft beer thing.
Absolutely. When I was talking about the airport, I mean, that's one thing Sam Adams has going for him: great distribution. So there may be times when you're at a bar or a pub or an airport or somewhere at a stadium where this might be available, and there's very little other craft choices. But honestly, guys, go out, try one of these sometime. You're at a bar and there's limited selection, you won't be disappointed. I'm really enjoying it. I'm not just blowing smoke up anybody's patootie. So pretty impressed with this. Again, and those of you out there that if you're looking for something light and easy drinking with a nice pleasant cherry flavor to it, this won't chase anybody away. It's a real enjoyable, easy drinker. So, not often that we review a Sam Adams beer, but honestly, I give this a pretty high mark for perfect for the Gateway Beer Show. So, I recommend it. All right, so I guess Dugout, I think you're next in the rotation. Take it away.
All right. I have one from Muskegon, Michigan. It's Pigeon Hill Brewery, and I know we've mentioned it before. We may have even mentioned this beer before. I know we've never reviewed it on the show, but this is called OCP, Oatmeal Cream Pie. And I picked this one because it's sort of a novelty to taste like oatmeal cream pie. I mean, we all know what those are. We had them as kids growing up. But it was sort of done as a challenge to come up with a beer that tasted just like one. And as the brewery says, it through the use of oats, marshmallow stuff, and other highly secret ingredients, OCP was born. And so it pours kind of a dark brown, amber color. It very small head on this, not much lacing at all. So on the nose of it, you get you get like a pumpkin spice off it. I guess that's the main, kind of the main thing that strikes me is that pumpkin spice and some bready malts you get off of that as well. So taste-wise, yeah, it's it's pretty darn close, man. You get, I know there's a lot of oats in this beer, so it's got a little thicker of a mouthfeel to it. You get like whatever that spice is they're using in it. I'm sure it's similar to a pumpkin spice, but it's not pumpkin beer. There's a big difference there. And then there's an overall sweetness to it too. Like I said, I just picked this one because I thought it's a fun beer. It tastes like what it's advertised as. And maybe if it's a novelty or one or two, you might have one, but it certainly would draw somebody in and make them at least interested in what the beer is. And especially if they've had these as kids growing up, you're going to want to dig into this stuff. It's really a pleasant beer. It's sort of along the lines of a brown ale or darker amber beer. And I think overall Pigeon Hill does some pretty nice products. This one's just sort of a fun, what the heck kind of beer, If you guys have had this, correct?
I've had it, and it does taste like the cookie. I guess that would be your angle to get somebody that's new to craft beer to give it a shot. It's got a little bit of sweetness to it, and it's kind of like a drinkable cookie. But yeah,
I'm not trying to strong arm anybody into becoming you have to drink craft beer. That's certainly not in my DNA as far as enjoying craft beer, but spreading the word around is saying, yeah, you got to try this. Do you ever have one of these? It'd be like somebody made a beer that tasted like Twinkies. Would you want to try it? I would.
Well, exactly. I mean, we always start out the show by saying we're not pretentious, and not to say that, but yeah, we're looking at beers to recommend to those people that maybe are curious about craft beer, or maybe their go-to is a Bud Light or a mainstream macro beer. So we're not looking down on those people, but we are trying to expose you to other options that you may enjoy. So that's what this episode's all about. And OCP, the Oatmeal Cream Pie, certainly falls in that category of something. If you haven't had one, give it a shot. It's pretty tasty. Ross, I don't know if you ever had this one down in North Carolina.
No, I've never seen it.
Well, we'll have to get you a can or two next time we swap some beers. Well, all right. I guess that leads us to you, Ross. What do you have for us?
Okay, well, I'm going to preface it a little bit with, so I take the gateway seriously. So whenever I'm, my wife and I end up going to a party, to a dinner or something at somebody else's house, I'll make sure to bring you with me, knowing that most of the other people at the party, certainly if it's not somebody that I hang out with a lot, I probably know that there are not going to be a lot of craft beer drinkers there. So that if I bring something that we would normally talk about, it's going to be too much in one way or another. It's probably going to be too bitter or sour or too hoppy or something. A lot of the things that we talk about tend to be things you have to kind of work your way into them, I think. So the choice that I've been making since pretty much it came out, I guess it's been 5 or 6 years ago, was the Sam Smith's Organic Chocolate Stout. I'll always make sure to bring a 4-pack of that with me if we're going somewhere, just to have 1 for me and 3 to try to pass out and have other people try. And I've never had anybody complain about it. It's got all the qualities I think that we look for when making sure we don't want to turn people off to a beer. So it's not going to be it's not going to have any of that bitterness to it that you tend to get with, chocolate stouts particularly. It's just got it's a very easy to drink beer. And it's also got kind of a desserty texture to it. It's a little bit on the sweet side. So you can have it after dinner, and people can actually share a 12-ounce bottle, can be divided among 2 or 3 people who haven't had this kind of beer before, and everybody's satisfied with having that much and liking it. So I'm going to go ahead and crack it now. And you see that it is it's not the typical motor oil that I tend to go for. It's a nice dark brown. It's got a nice tan head on it, a couple fingers worth there as I just poured it out of the bottle. It has, I guess it's definitely, it's a nice, I guess you'd say it's a coffee colored beer almost. It's certainly not opaque or anything. It's got a nice light sweet smell to it. You definitely get a little bit of the chocolate malt and cocoa. Again, you're not getting anything bitter. It's a nice light sweet smell that comes across. It's in terms of looking at a person who was going to be having it for the first time. They're not going to be overwhelmed by anything. So taste wise, it's a nice. Again, you get that nice roasted chocolate to it. A little bit malty, a little bit. Again, it's a little bit sweet without being overly sweet, so you're going to get the chocolatey flavor, but without the bitterness and without being overpowered by the sweetness. Some of the beers I think that I normally have would be overpowering on the sweetness scale if somebody had them for the first time as their introduction to a craft beer. This doesn't hit that. It's a 5% ABV. So it's not going to knock them out like some of the heavier beers we might normally have are. And again, it's got that nice, smooth, easy to drink, slightly sweet taste that has almost a desserty effect to it. So it's something that's easy to have while you're talking about things after dinner. I wouldn't necessarily say it's a sipper like some of our other stouts, but that's what it's going to come off as with people who haven't necessarily gone down the craft beer route or even the stout route for the first time. People who are used to lighter colored beers for sure. They're not as this isn't the bitter stout that a lot of people get introduced to when the first time they have a stout. Overall, I still love this beer. It's low ABV, gives me something that I can, on my own end, pound as a light beer drinker when other people are having their lawnmower beers. This can substitute for that for me. And I still purchase this regularly. I always have a bottle or two in the fridge in case guests come over that aren't going to be able to necessarily appreciate a lot of the other stuff that I have, out there in the beer fridge. So again, this is a wonderful, easy drinking, slightly sweet stout that I think I've never had anybody say, "Oh, that's terrible," or "Oh, I don't like that taste at all." And it has the other the big positive to it is once they've been introduced to it, this is pretty much available everywhere. If you go to, it's in Total Wine. If you go to most bottle shops will have some of this and some other Samuel Smith products beside it, which can kind of get people to try some of their other products. They've got the oatmeal and a couple of the bready one. So that's my review. I still love this. It's unlike, I guess, some of the other Gateway things. I have it on hand, and I still have some regularly.
Well, yeah. Funny you brought us Samuel Smith's into the conversation. I was back in D.C. last week visiting some old friends, and back before the craft beer boom, we always used to relish Samuel Smith's Oatmeal Stout. We used to say it was the best beer in the world. Of course, that was back when there was 100 breweries in existence in the U.S. But I stand by all their beers are high quality, enjoyable. Like you pointed out with the chocolate one that you reviewed, most of them, or at least many of them, are fairly lower ABVs, like the Oatmeal Stout that I enjoyed. And when I was back in D.C., we actually went and bought some of that and drank some during my stay, and remembered how good that was. So that might be a little bit tougher of a sell to to somebody that's not accustomed to craft beer. The Oatmeal Stout, it's got that nice creamy mouthfeel and a nice flavor, but certainly the chocolate one that you talked about seems like that would be a great introduction.
Yeah, like I say, there's a good slot for it, and when you're at a dinner or something, which is kind of just when in that dessert phase or after dinner talking phase, you can kind of bring it out and people can try it then without having to deal with it while they're having their main food or anything. So it's always worked well. I think I've started many people down the path of exploring the craft beer world by introducing them to this first and saying, oh, if you liked it, you can go to Total Wine and find it there. And then that kind of gets them on the beer aisle and looking at other things as well. And then I get questions. Hey, well, I saw this. Is that any good? I saw this. Is that any good? And then you've got them started. So, and that was the goal.
All right, good stuff. All right, I guess we're back around the horn to me. And I'm going to taste a beer that I've never had, this exact beer, but it's a pretty close cousin of one that we've reviewed on the show and that many of us enjoy. It's Short's Brewing Company Soft Parade Shandy. Now, I know we've had Soft Parade, and Soft Parade is something, a nice fruity beer that we all can enjoy. Part of me wanted to get a Soft Parade because it's like 7% and maybe a little bit more substantial. But I thought for this episode, the Soft Parade Shandy would be perfect. I've heard great things. I haven't tasted it myself. But this is the 4.2% version. And I'm going to read from the label. It's the Short's Flagship Fruit Rye Ale, brewed with blueberries, blackberries, raspberries, strawberries, and homemade lemonade. So I believe what this is like Soft Parade with some lemonade in it, which pretty much was what a shandy is. So I just cracked it open and I'm pouring it out. I'm getting a really nice, again, a nice frosty white head, but it disappears pretty quickly. Just a little bit left when it dissipates. Nice, like a light orange, almost like a rosé color here, like pinkish, orangish. Nice and clear, crystal clear, with some bubbles coming from the bottom and the top, and a little bubbly. So I'm gonna check the aroma. Definitely smell the lemon. There's fruit in there, but the lemon is the most prominent. So let's take a taste. So yeah, where I was expected a little bit more lemonade flavor, it's actually pretty well balanced between the lemonade and the fruit. Comes into like one big like berry lemon, ever so slightly tart like a glass of lemonade, not like some of the fruit beers that we reviewed in the past. Take another sip. First thing I noticed is I saw a lot of bubbles, but it's really not overly carbonated. It's not very bubbly. Now everything's kind of dissipated. It's almost like drinking a glass of strawberry lemonade when you go to like Chili's or somewhere. When I say strawberry, there is strawberries in it, but it's a blend of different berries. But it's just like a very easy to drink, slightly sweet, slightly tart, like fruity lemonade, just like you would get at a restaurant. You almost can't even tell there's alcohol in it. Real easy to drink. Personally, I like the regular Soft Parade better, but I can see how this could be a crushable summer drink. And I can also see how it would be a good gateway beer for somebody to. I mean, it's almost like you're not drinking beer. It's a nice. You'd almost, if I was blind tasting this, I would almost think it might be like a Seagram's wine cooler or something, but which it isn't, and that's not a slam on it. But I could definitely see this outside hot weather. It's a lower ABV. You can crush a few of them and not be falling over yourself. Pretty easily enjoyed beer by majority of people. So it's good. But for me, give me the 7% soft parade. And not because it's 7%, but I'd rather taste more of that good berry flavor than have it diluted with the lemonade. But whereas of the two we've tried tonight, I'd rather have the Sam Adams was more appealing to me personally, but I can see how this could be a real easy drinker for a lot of people. Probably more people would gravitate to this than the Sam Adams Cherry, but it's good and enjoyable. It is what it is. Anybody else had this?
No, I've not had it. And I'll tell you why, because I'm just not a fan of, number one, not a fan of shandy beers. I just prefer beer without the lemonade. And then secondly, I find the shandy beers have a real high acidic content, and I can't have more than one of them before it starts to sort of burn the back of my throat, and I'll be running for the roll of Tums. So I steer clear of the shandies. I steer clear of the Radlers. I'm all about a fruit beer, but something in lower acidic measures.
I can see your concerns. I also am sensitive to acidic beers, but this is nowhere near. I mean, some of the sours that I've had, after a couple sips, my stomach's rumbling. This is pretty mild. I think they've got the acid in check, but duly noted some of the concerns you have on the shandies. It's not for everyone, and it may not be for you. It may not be for me. It may not be for Ross, but I can see how there's a lot of people probably would find this really enjoyable, and it seems like something that I could sneak into my wife. If I told her it wasn't beer, she would probably like it. If I tell her it's some kind of beer, she would not like it. So,
well, I think the purpose of the episode is not to sneak it on people. It's to present something that's maybe a little bit different from what they're used to drinking, and then have them enjoy it. So, but I know what you mean. That comment just made me laugh.
You know my wife, and you know that she usually she hears the word beer and runs. So I would have to sneak it by her, but by no means am I implying that you'd have to sneak it by everybody else. But my wife's pretty tough cookie on. We did get her to finally admit she liked some mead, so we're getting there. But
I also accomplished that task. I got Tetsuko to try the semi-sweet strawberry mead that I got from Honey Girl, and she liked it. So we have something that we both can drink from the same bottle now, which wasn't true, a couple months ago.
Wonderful. Well, baby steps, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, there you have it. Soft Parade Shandy. Easy drinker. Now we're going into fall. Maybe the time is passing, but I can see this people crushing this at tailgates in the Indian summer here at football games starting. But for me, I'll go back to, if I'm going to have my choice, I'd totally go to regular Soft Parade. I think it's much more enjoyable for me personally. But to each his own. No, not a knock on you shorts. You got everybody covered. You got this for some people, and you got the Soft Parade for other people. And then there's Hop Stash for all of us. All right. Well, I think Dugout is going to take the grand finale here. And I think he's got a homebrew.
I do, yeah. And I thought I would bring a homebrew into the mix because, when you're at a party and you bring out the homebrew, a lot of people are willing to try that over a commercial, like, say, an IPA or a brown ale or just some kind of what they deem a heavy craft beer. And they'll ask questions about it. And then, this particular beer I have is very approachable. It's got a pretty good kick. It's a 9%. It's a triple, Belgian triple, but it also has lemon and ginger root and green tea and jasmine, to be specific on the tea. So it pours a beautiful gold color. There's just a slight bit of haze to it, which is fine for this style, because the Belgian triples generally don't really come that clear. So there's always a little haze to them. This is starting to carb up nicely. I opened another bottle, 4 or 5 days ago, and it seemed a little flat side. This one opened up, and the head's nice on it. Could still go a little bit more in the carbonation department, so I'll just leave the rest of these into the cellar and in the basement. As far as the nose goes, you get this sort of Belgian yeast banana, but you're also getting some bubblegum kind of smell to it, which I didn't notice that one at first. This particular beer had actually been on tap at the Michigan Homebrewers Fest a couple weekends ago, and somebody else noticed that point. And it's also very temperature specific as far as which flavors are coming out of it. So this one tends to be a little on the warm side, so I am getting a little bit of that bubblegum flavor to it. But I also get a really nice dose of the jasmine tea. It's the really nice thing about this beer is that the lemon and ginger and honey that were used in it all combined to sort of make one flavor. Nothing stands out. I mean, there is a little bit of lemon essence to it, but you're not getting tons of lemon. You're not getting tons of ginger. You can't pick out these individual flavors. They've melded into this beer. You do get the tea flavor, and that was by design, because there's no point in adding the tea if you can't taste the tea. But it's a very complex flavor palette going on here. A lot of stuff going on in the glass, but on the other side is really approachable, really drinkable. A couple weeks and these are ready, I will serve these up, and I guarantee you people that normally just turn their nose up at craft beer will be like, oh, give me some more of that. I want some more of that. So, nothing to get a craft beer party started with some newbies than some home brews. If it's god awful, don't. I mean, you just turn people off their life. But I mean, and you got to know if your beer's god awful or not.
Well,
that's a
one
really
of the great things you mentioned is, people gravitate when you have homebrew. They're excited. They're interested. Like, oh well, they have no idea what to expect. And when you can have them take a sip and actually enjoy it. I mean, first of all, as a homebrewer, there's nothing more satisfying than seeing someone enjoy your beer. But secondly, it does pique people's interest, even if you're not. I've had people that aren't even beer drinkers that, oh, well, you made that? Let me try it, So that's a really cool way to get people interested in beer in general, not even maybe somebody who's not a craft drinker. Maybe there's somebody who's not even a beer drinker, but they'll try your homebrew because you made it. So, and as we know, Doug makes some really, really good, outstanding beers. So how cool it is to go to a party and, hey, want to try some of my stuff? Everybody does. And that sounds like one I can't wait to taste. Or
I'll definitely have a few put aside here. I got a pretty good. We split a 5-gallon batch, all bottled up 3 ways, so I've got a decent amount of bottles, and quite a few bombers. So definitely the next time we do a share, I'll pull one of these things out. It's a funny thing about these homebrews is that I bottle and keg, and I think one batch one of the last batches was for a wedding, and I didn't bottle that one. I just left it in the keg, and the keg got ripped to shreds, like in a matter of less than a week. It's just destroyed. But the bottles can tend to hang around a little longer because I don't necessarily put them in the fridge and have them cold on hand, so I have to think about it. That kind of preserves the stash a little bit on those. Maybe I should just brew more, huh?
Why not? Why not? Well, gives me an excuse to come to your neck of the woods this weekend, which I actually have another reason to be up there. So I might be paying you a visit if you're in town this weekend.
Oh, yeah. Yep, I will be in town, and I might even be brewing at some point. I haven't really picked the time and day yet.
Well, we'll be in touch. I'd love to taste the beer you just reviewed. Sounds great. So maybe, Ross, I know you don't have another beer, but maybe each of us can go around the horn and talk about other beers that you might consider. Now, I'll throw one out there, and while you're thinking of one, Ross, I think reviewed this one already, so I didn't consider putting it on the show, but it was my favorite local beer of the summer, El Aguero from Griffin Claw, which is a Mexican lager with lime and salt in it. Actually, I think it was just lime, so forget about the salt. That's a Gosa. No, this is just a Mexican lager with lime, and I've just really been crushing these this summer. Pretty much whenever I go to the beer store and I'm looking for my double IPAs and my stouts and stuff. I'm like, well, let me grab a 4-pack of that. It's not that expensive, and I just drink those like they're water. I mean, out in the yard mowing the lawn. It's perfect summer beer. So that's another one that I think, maybe a Corona drinker, you could give them this, and I think it much better than a Corona. It's got the lime already in it, too, so you don't have to worry about that. So that's another one I'll throw out. Anybody else?
Yeah, along those same lines, I was talking with Scott, who, as you know, I've converted. He was one of my first converts way back when. JR has met my friend Scott in the past, once or twice probably. We had some beer together. But I was asking him, how he feels about things, and what he suggested along the same lines and the kind of, I guess, close to the same flavor profile that you just described is the Dogfish Head Sea Quench. He's been saying that he's been introducing that to people who would normally have something more along the lines of a big beer with a lime flavor to it, and they have all taken to it, with a great deal of pleasure. And again, it's something that's a lower alcohol beer, and it's an easy drinker, and it's a summer beer. So he was really extolling the virtues of that as an introduction to craft beer for a lot of people, based on the flavor profile of things that are being advertised in the big beer world now. So,
well, I'm glad you brought up the alcohol content issue of it, because the beer I just reviewed is a 9%er. I know it's a 9%er. I know what to expect when I drink a 9% beer. A lot of folks I know, particularly some neighbors and friends that stick to their same olds, are used to, anywhere from that 4.7 range or below. And when you introduce a 9% ale, it might taste good, and it might go down like your Miller Lite or like your Bud Light, but it affects you differently. And somebody could end up in a whole world of hurt if they're not monitored on the intake. So you can't take a 9% beer and drink it like Miller Lite and just expect to get up and walk away. It doesn't work that way. Your body doesn't work that way. It's used to things. So always, it's not fun to see your friends, and they're not happy about it too, and they get all jacked up on something like that, and they're not expecting it. So always good to play monitor and say, hey, slow down, man.
Yeah, that's a great point. I know the ones I had were pretty low ABV. I think that was one of the criteria I was kind of thinking of, because I can remember going to Coonan for the first time and drinking a couple of drippas and like, whoa.
Yeah, and that's it's funny that you bring that particular beer up, because yes, that was the case with my neighbor Lisa, my old neighbor Lisa, and we went to Coonan, and she's like, oh, I love drippa, this is great. And we're like, slow down. And of course she
sneak up on you,
and hilarity ensued. So yeah, at least we got her out of there before something really bad happened. But yeah, we'll sneak up on you.
Hopefully next time you converted her to Fluffer. And have a few more of those.
I think she got stuck on Diabolical from North Peak. And still to this day, she lives in the Chicago area now, but she has to bring cases of it back from Michigan, but she's still doing it. Loves that beer.
Yeah, that's
and she was a solid Miller Lite drinker, that and nothing at all.
That was the other thing I wanted to bring up, but I hadn't. I kind of got sidetracked from it. Is that when introducing people to craft beer, you are generally talking to people who, for the most part, have found a beer and have stuck with that beer their whole lives. And if you don't guide them along the path of, hey, this thing that I'm showing you is one of several things that you can try, they can get stuck on whatever that next thing was that you just showed them and they liked, and that's what they're going to buy from now on, because it kind of sounds like maybe that's what your friend did. Oh, I found something I like, and that's just what I'm going to stick to. And I try to, when I'm introducing the beer to people, like I said, when I was talking about the Sam Smiths, it's to get them to go into and go look at the beer aisle when they're looking to buy the beer that I showed them, and see all these other beers that they're doing and ask about them as well. Because I think people have, a lot of the time the people that I'm introducing or trying to introduce to craft beer have literally been drinking a beer or one of 2 or 3 beers, and that's it, the entire time that they've been drinking beer. And they haven't really branched out into trying. I know I'm guilty of sticking to a style, or sticking mostly to 1 or 2 styles. But I think the people that I know that are not craft beer drinkers are kind of guilty to sticking to just one kind of beer itself, whether it's going to be Bud Light or Miller Lite or whatever. And you want to try to make sure that they understand that there's lots of things to try, not just the one that you're showing.
Amen. Well, that's why we do the show. I mean, a lot of the craft beer people, very few craft beer drinkers are loyal to one beer. It's all about the discovery, the experience. A lot of shops do singles for that reason. A lot of people are into the discovery. They'd rather have a 6-pack of 6 different beers or be able to buy a single. I mean, even just shopping for episodes like tonight, I went to a place that had singles. I don't want to buy 6 short shandies. I just wanted to try one and move on to the next thing. So to each their own, if you find something you like, there's nothing wrong with that. Again, whatever trips your trigger. But the part of craft beer is, there's so many breweries, so many styles, so many beers available, and the discovery is a great, enjoyable part of that. But I hope that some of the listeners out there that maybe are just discovering the craft scene, we'll take into account some of these beers that we've either tried or talked about, because there's some great stuff out there. But if you're stuck in a rut, why not step out of your comfort zone and see what else is out there? That's what it's all about. Any hipster news, Dugout? I think somebody ceased operations this week.
Yeah, I believe it was Tall Grass Brewing out of Kansas. Not a true, close their doors for everything, but, and it's certainly not a total death knell for them. From everything I was reading, they didn't have the capital to continue to operate. We're trying to negotiate some new terms to keep their brewery functions open. But as far as distribution goes with those beers, what you see on the shelves is it. There's nothing getting shipped out anymore at this point until further notice. So believe they had some nice beers. I know that I really enjoyed the 8-bit. That was an IPA. I believe they did a double IPA that was 16-bit. They had Buffalo Sweat, which was probably their main flagship beer. The Buffalo Sweat's an oatmeal stout, but really high quality products, all in cans, smaller-ish operations. So not sure what happened, if they got, maybe the cost of ingredients go up. You just don't know. I mean, maybe they were just not finance to continue on the path that they were with the revenues that they were gaining. They could have had slip in sales. You just, that stuff's very unclear to me, but always kind of sad to hear when a brewery that you actually purchased their products and went out and looked for from time to time closes their doors. Never like to hear that, especially on the distribution side, because, Kansas isn't really a destination area. I mean, unless you're Uncle Pete and you're driving cross country and you're a big old RV camper, and you could swing down and hit something like a place like that. But, for most people, it's like it's coast to coast, right?
Well, the reality of it is it's never been more challenging to get shelf space in stores. I mean, there's so many breweries, so many beers, and it's kind of become a survival of the fittest. And, for whatever reason, this is one that at least that they are going to still have their tap room and still be a brewery. They just they're closing their production side of things, and it's very difficult. And it's easy to make a profit when you're selling everything out the front door and getting all the profit. But when you're selling things at low margin, and the distributor has to make money, and the retailer has to make money, it's a tough business. And now you got big companies like AB InBev and Miller Coors and Constellation and Heineken buying up brands, and the big companies are able to go in and get a lot of the distribution points, and it makes it tough on the little guy. So it's just the sign of the times. So as much as we champion having all those great discoveries and being able to try all these different things, there's a finite shelf space at retail, and it's the reality. So,
well, sure, and it's one thing to be a successful brewery and have that tap room and have people waiting for your releases, but man, it's a whole different animal when you take it nationwide, and they were pretty much nationwide, and they were doing it pretty much on their own dime. They're not backed by any of these big guys, and who knows? I mean, maybe they were in talks and nothing came about it, or they refused to sell in. There's a lot of factors out there. There's a lot of competition. There's a lot of people who want to see breweries fail because they have their own interests at heart. Certainly not amongst the craft brewers, but some other companies that happen to come in and buy other breweries just gloat on the fact that they put somebody else out of business. So it's sad. It really is sad.
Well, one last note. Founders dear to our heart here in Michigan just released a new beer, and I think Dugout's the only one of the three of us that have tried this yet. I have a feeling it's going to be in pretty good distribution in all their distribution markets. But again, Dugout, why don't you tell us, since you've had a chance to taste this, what's out there now and the exciting news from Founders of the new beer they just released?
Well, the beer is it's actually, they released it, I believe, about 3 or 4 years ago, and it's called Better Half. And what the beer is their old ale, which is Curmudgeon, which we have, I believe we reviewed that on the show, but probably early on in our show, first 10 episodes. That one might have gone on in the old ale episode. But Curmudgeon is really kind of a true to style, but with a little extra American hop added in there. It's got a little hoppier notes than, say, any sort of British or UK style old ales. But what they did with this particular beer is they barrel aged it in maple whiskey barrels. So they were bourbon barrels that held maple syrup, and then after that life, they went on to become beer barrels. Has a, I'm not going to open one because I've got one left right now. So I'm just going to go from memory. It's got a beautiful dark brown glaze to it. The color is just, there's such great clarity to it. The nose, you get this, just a hint of bourbon, a hint of maple, but you get kind of that sort of bready, a little whiff of alcohol. I mean, this stuff's coming at 13.7%. I was making the comment when we were chatting a little bit before the show, and I said, this stuff's ready to drink now. I know a lot of people like to buy these higher ABV beers and then put them in their cellars, but I just happen to think this one's ready to go now. I don't know how much more you're going to get out of cellaring it. You might get a little bit of relaxation of the burn on the alcohol, but I think some of the maple will fade. And from what I understand with beers like that, that starts to happen, you get sort of an off mint flavor to it, and which is kind of not very pleasant in a beer like that. So if you see them, grab them, drink them. I mean, you want to save one for 6 or 7 months, I'm sure that's going to be great. But you want to put it down for 4 or 5 years, you're probably just not the best use of your money.
All right. Well, I'm looking forward to that, and I think it's already available in the Detroit tap room for Founders. I haven't had a chance to get there, but my local beer store. And they had
it was there. I believe they released it last weekend. Still there. They had bottles going out the shelves over the weekend. They sort of sold out on theirs, but it's all over distribution. I had it at my local grocery store, so I picked up a 4-pack. I saw other 4-packs while I was at a different store shopping today, so it's definitely out there. It's not in the rare beer category. They made a bunch of it.
Yep. Well, I know this had one time had a cult status back. I think it was 2011, the last time it was released. So my local beer store said it'll be here Friday, which by the time this episode airs, I should have some. So maybe we'll hear a little bit more about it in a future episode, but I'm looking forward to it. I'm sure Ross will get some North Carolina
like
too.
To do a proper review of it, other than talk about the one I had last night.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll get some here. I'll have to get out and get some.
All right. Well, I think that about does it. Anybody else have any final comments before we head to Mexico? All right. Well, thank you again for joining us. Chris isn't here to say tweet this, tweet that, but you can find us on Twitter at Beer Nuts Podcast. You can find me on Twitter at Michigan Beer Guy. And other than that, as they say in old Mexico City,
AMF.
If you like this show, please tell a friend. Please follow us on Twitter and like and share us on Facebook by searching for Christopher Media. You can subscribe to all ChristopherMedia.net shows for free on ChristopherMedia.net. Please make sure to rate and comment on all your favorite Christopher Media shows. Thank you in advance for supporting Christopher Media by clicking on the PayPal button and by clicking through to all the sponsors who support ChristopherMedia.net. Thank you for visiting ChristopherMedia.net, and thank you for listening. Thank you for visiting ChristopherMedia.net.
For the ones who know that a little late is always too late, and that the clock doesn't stop just because you're missing a part, Grainger offers supplies and solutions for every industry. And our Keep Stock inventory management solutions help ensure you have the right stuff in the right place at exactly the right time. Visit Grainger.com/keepstock to learn more. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.